Before My Heart Gives Out by Kira 18 on AO3. Chapter 10 Underwater. Gray carpeted the sky as Todoroki walked on the sidewalk, his head held back, eyes gazing onto the onslaught of clouds forming in the vicinity. The gloomy weather mirrored his own emotions and threatened the world with a rainy night to come. It spoke volumes that Todoroki would rather walk out into this weather than stay at home with his father. To other people, Todoroki would seem to be a normal teenager, if only a little peculiar with his mismatched red and white hair. Although if you looked close enough, you'd notice that he favored his left leg, the stiffness in every step he took and the tension held in his shoulders, as if he bore the weight of the world. After the attack on the USJ, his father took it upon himself to intensify his training. The number 2 hero wanting his son to get stronger, so that, in the man's exact words, he could crush the villains who dare attack him next time. He hated his father with a burning passion, hated everything about the so-called hero. So when Endeavor got a call, he took it as an opportunity to bolt right out of there. He needed to clear his mind, and for the first time, Todoroki found himself walking into a cat cafe. Miroku seemed like a normal coffee shop, if only for the cats that lounged around the place lazily. The owner seemed to be busy, talking to a boy, when he walked in, so he took it upon himself to find a seat. However, he couldn't help but watch the interaction between the two. Although, from a closer look, it seemed it was a more one-sided speech. The lady hadn't even noticed that her words were going on deaf ears. He watched, attention rapt, as the boy walked to the counter as if on autopilot, his movements stiff and uncertain, his walking stick clicking against the tiled floor with each step. Feeling a little creepy, he decided to stop staring at the kid. His blindness wasn't an invitation to stare after all. The calmness and coziness of the shop eased some of the anger he was feeling. The tension in his body subsiding with every cat that huddled near his left side. His quirk was a perfect heaven for the small creatures. However, the calm atmosphere was abruptly broken by the sound of shattering glass, the noise effectively startling him out of his reverie. Looking towards the source of the noise, he couldn't help the unease he felt. The green-haired boy from earlier was crouched on the floor, hands patting the space around him as if in search for the falling shards of glass. His fingers were red, bleeding from the various cuts. Not that he seemed to notice. Not wanting the boy to hurt himself further, he got up and tried to usher him away, although that seemed to be the wrong move. If the way the boy flinched and backed away was any indication, the boy then promptly ran into the lady from earlier. The woman didn't even pay his distress any mind, ignoring the injured employee's needs. She opted to kicking him out on the spot. The boy, Midoriya, she called him, took off right after that, not even stopping when Todoroki tried to make sure he was okay. Every bone in his body told him to follow the teen, run after him, do anything to help. However, he had a bill to pay, and by the time he made it out of the store, the teen was already long gone. Todoroki chose to walk for a while, if only to clear his mind from the event he just witnessed. He had been walking for a few minutes when he saw it. Saw him. The same blind teen who was at the coffee shop was now right in front of him, walking at a faster pace, carelessly bumping into people left and right as he made his way through the busier streets. His walking stick was clenched tightly in his hand. He didn't even seem to know where he was going. However, what worried him the most was the fact that the greenette was currently walking right into traffic. His body moved before his mind could even catch up, his hand outstretched, reaching for the boy just as a car swerved. A loud honking sound resonated in his ears, but he paid it no mind. His mind too focused on his goal. He had to get this kid out of the way. Time seemed to slow to a stop, his movements practically going in slow motion as his hands gripped Midoriya's shirt. What happened next can only be described as a blur of movement. He remembers pulling the kid back, putting all his strength in the action. A screeching sound resounded through the streets. People screamed as they watched the scene before him. Pain flared in his shoulder as he hit the ground, the rough landing knocking the breath out of him. The car stops a few feet in front of them, right past the same spot they were landed on just a few moments ago. He looked to his left, towards the kid he pulled down with him. The teen's milky green eyes are blown wide, frantic and confused. His glasses lay discarded a few steps in front of him, cracked from the impact with the concrete ground. Someone speaks to them, asking if they were okay, yet Todoroki can't find himself to answer. He's too focused on the boy next to him, watching the teen's shuddering breaths. Noticing the shake in his shoulder, the fear buried deep in those unseeing eyes. "Are you okay?" he asks quietly, not wanting to startle him any further. The teen flinches, anyway. His head jerks to look in his direction, his eyes missing him by just a few centimeters, as if looking over his shoulder. He opens his mouth to answer, but closes it after a few moments, not seeming to find his voice just yet. Instead, he nods his head. "Thanks," he says after a few minutes. I wasn't paying attention." His voice is soft, breathless. Todoroki nods his acknowledgement, but feels incredibly stupid when he realizes his mistake. "Yes, it's okay, just be more careful." He doesn't intend for it to come off as a scolding, but with his tone, he can't help it. "I mean, you could have gotten hurt, or worse," he mumbles. "Oh, yes, I will." The teen gets back up with surprising ease. The tremor in his body, Todoroki notices, is gone now. It's as if nothing happened, as if he hadn't just nearly died. "I'm just not having the best day." His voice comes out low and soft. Suddenly, he seems really tired. "Anyways, thanks again for the save." His tone seems cheerful, but the tightness in his eyes is telling a different story. "What's your name, Hero?" "Yeah. I know, I saw you back at the coffee shop." Midoriya looked sheepish at that. "And I'm not a hero. Not yet. He's barely a first year at UA, after all." "I'm a UA student, Todoroki Shouta." "Ah, so you saw that, huh?" He chuckles. The sound comes out wrong, empty at any distinct emotion. "Well, it seems you chose the right course, Hero." He smiles a little at that. Todoroki goes to correct him again, but the teen is already walking away. "Although I'm gonna be honest with you, not a big fan of your father." Shota's shocked expression goes unnoticed. "Well, anyways," the greenhead continues before the fire and ice user can comment. "I gotta go now. See you around, Todoroki." Izuku doesn't really get what happened, doesn't understand it. He thought he was gonna get hit by a car, but instead he finds himself being shoved to the ground. Voices and sounds muddled together, his senses flaring all at once. It's only for a second, but there they were back. His powers were there. That is, until they weren't again. He hits the ground hard. Pain flares in multiple parts of his body. He doesn't really feel it, though. His senses too focused on the thumbing sound next to him, frantic and fast. Probably his savior's heartbeat. For a few seconds, the world is clear. He sees the outlines of people gathering in front of them on the streets, sees the forms of the vehicle that nearly killed him. However, his powers are gone before he can even begin to realize that they were back. It's something, though, a spark of hope. Hope that his powers aren't gone forever. He feels it throughout his conversation with the student, that probably saved him. Probably one of Shinsou's classmates. He feels it in the way his hearing siphons, in spades during the whole interaction, senses it in the way echoes flash in the darkness of his vision. Small, random outbursts of vibrations echoing around him. It's blurry, distant, but it's there, and it's something. Bidding the teen goodbye, he goes as far as to tease him about saving and comment on his father. He takes off. He wants to call Shinsou, tell him what happened. He needs to clear his mind. He needs someone to help him keep his thoughts at bay. He needs his best friend to help him find some way out of this mess he calls his life. His phone, luckily, survived the fall. More than he could say about his glasses, though. Therefore, he sends the boy a voicemail and a location, telling him to pick him up. He doesn't want to admit it, but he's completely lost. He figures that what happened when he's walking around without paying attention. He hates it, feeling this vulnerable, this dependent on people. He doesn't let his mind wander this time, though. He doesn't want a repeat of the events from earlier. He couldn't take it, having to relive everything all over again. Shinsou tells him that he'll be there in a few minutes, and once again, Izuku can't help but feel grateful. He doesn't know what he would have done without him in his life. His walking stick hits something, and he feels some sort of bench. He opts to rest on it while waiting. Wind picks up around him. The cool air hits his face, ruffling his already untamed curls. It's probably going to rain soon. Sitting there, it hits him all at once. Everything just crashes into him like a wave. A deep-rooted weariness settles in his shoulder, a weight too heavy for his body to bear, and he feels so tired. His body aches all over from his newly acquired injuries and his old ones. The cut on his finger stinging, reminding him of the impending dilemma he was going to have to face eventually. His heart throbs from both the fall he took and the rising sensitivity in his mind. He hears someone walk up to him on the bench he's sitting on. The person stops short, a few steps in front of him. "You look like hell." He doesn't know if he should feel offended or relieved at the new arrival. He goes for the latter. Shinsou's company reassures him. "Shinsou?" If the lavender-haired teen hears the slight crack in his voice, he doesn't comment on it. Instead, he simply and wordlessly takes a seat next to him on the bench. He feels the weight next to him slump further down, and he knows what the teen is waiting for. Slowly but surely, Izuku leans backwards and settles his head on the boy's shoulder. They sit there, in comfortable silence, as Izuku takes his time to form his thoughts. His friend is a constant and solid presence in his life. "I got fired today." He speaks up, finally, letting the words and their meaning hang in the air between them for a moment before continuing. "I don't know what happens next." Shinsou, ever the rational thinker, doesn't freak out or get mad. He just sighs and leans on him a little more. "We'll get through this. Don't worry, we'll find a way." As Shinsou says that, Izuku feels a couple of raindrops hit his skin. It's definitely going to rain on them. "Don't freak out, but I may have also almost got ran over by a car." He feels the shift in his friend immediately, the way his shoulders tense, his breath catching as if he was about to yell out something. "Don't worry, though. Someone saved me. I think he's in your class? Todoroki Shoto? He said he was in the hero course." If only slightly, Shinsou relaxes again, although he can feel the piercing gaze next to him, scanning his body for any severe injuries. "I'll have to thank him later, then," Shoto murmured, finally. "Did you get hurt again?" The disinterest in his voice barely hides his concern. "No, in fact, I think it even helped me a little." "Only you would think almost getting ran over by a car would help." Shinsou chuckles, the exasperation in his tone impedable. "It's not like that. It's just, for a moment there, I felt my powers come back. Even now, I can feel them, as if my senses are slowly heightening again. At least one good thing came out of this. The drops of water are now multiplying. Slowly but surely, it begins to pour around them. The rain washes over them, soaking their clothes in an instant. Droplets of water kiss their skin and trace patterns across their body. It becomes a living fabric, something that Izuku can reach his hands through and feel. The water shifts under his touch, and it's as if a switch has been clicked. His eyes widen as he feels something snap back into place, as if a missing piece of the puzzle has finally been found. Suddenly, everything feels right again. The world around him bursts into life. It hits him so hard that he has to close his eyes. Hey, Izuku, you okay there? Even with his eyes closed, he can see his best friend's form. He feels the concern radiating from his posture, hears his increased heartbeat. He feels each droplet of water hitting his skin, hears the distant footsteps of strangers rushing through the rain to find shelter, feels the buzz of the city wash over him and overwhelm his senses. It shouldn't be normal. It isn't. But it's his normal, and it's as if the world is back on its course. It takes him a few minutes to readjust to the sudden influx of information being thrusted at him. When his breath settles back to normal, when everything isn't as loud and as intense as before, he slowly opens his eyes back up again. What he sees takes his breath away. It's not the usual scenery he's used to. It's not the vague forms he sees amidst the void and darkness. Instead, for the first time in his life, he sees something more than a vague shape. He can't help the tears that form in his eyes as he sees for the first time his best friend's face. He's still blind, he still can't see, but it's different. It's something more. He realizes, with a start, that he'd never used his powers under this much rain before. Usually the world around him is somewhat clearer. However, it's never been like this before. Each droplet of water creates a ripple of vibrations that echoes and spreads. Each raindrop makes a sound as it hits the surface, and for the first time in forever, Izuku can see. Oh my god. He whispers, breathlessly, happiness and wonder overwhelming him, and gazes into his best friend's eyes. He sees the exact moment Shinsou seems to understand what's happening, sees the exasperation and awe in his expression. He can't help but think that it's the most beautiful thing he's ever seen, the way the rain falls and glimmers in a million pieces as it touches his skin. It's as if the world is shining, small sparks of light, lifting his darkness for the first time. His hand, unconsciously, goes up to touch Shinsou's face, outstretched and shaking. His hesitation is cut short, as if the teen in question meets him halfway, taking hold of his hand and guiding it all the way to his face. Shinsou's hand is warm against his, and he helps him trace his features, allowing Izuku to map out every inch of his face, committing to memory every detail as if it's the last time he'll ever see it. It's probably the case, after all. His powers are back now. They're in full force now. The rain helps too. However, it won't be like that for long. Izuku's probably never going to get this chance again. They stay there for a long moment, frozen in time as the rain falls around them. Every drop of water adds a whirlwind of their world. By then, Shinsou is crying too. Their tears are mixed with the water that pours over them, both of them too overwhelmed to pay the cold any mind. For the first time in the past few weeks, Izuku's world doesn't feel as dark anymore. As they sit there, he finally believes that maybe, just maybe, he's going to be okay. Alright, so we got a Todoroki POV. So that was interesting to get his POV, which, by the way, fuck Todoroki's dad. Endeavor Todoroki is a son of a bitch, and nobody likes him. Anyways, so, Todoroki saved Izuku. I'm just gonna say thank you, Shota. Thank you so much. You saved my very, very, very endangered green bean. Thank you very much. I was genuinely worried that he was gonna go to the hospital, and I was gonna cry this episode. This chapter. God damn it. I'm never gonna end, like, the whole calling chapters episodes at this point. Somebody in my comments is like, why can't they just be called episodes? It'll make it easier. I'm like, yeah, it would make it easier on me. But this chapter was a very interesting chapter. I'm surprised I didn't cry. It seems like that ending, you know, the whole should have made me cry. But the tears haven't started. I wonder why not. But thankfully, Izuku gets his powers back, kind of. And then, for like a flash, and then it goes away, and then it comes back completely. Which, maybe they'll go away soon after, but I want to talk about that. I think this stands again with my theory. It has been at least a couple days, right? At the very least, a couple days of him healing and stuff like that. So maybe his body is finally able to get the healing powers back, and the reason why it was so, not the healing powers, but the seeing quote-unquote powers back, and the intensity of it all is explained via, you know, could be explained via the whole, when you stop doing something or something stops, the second it comes back, it hits you, right? This could be with alcohol, this could be with just a habit, right? Like, it's what happens regularly. Like, you stop doing something for a prolonged period of time. When you do it again, it hits you that much harder. Whether it's harder, more intense, whatever pointing it is, it always hits you a lot harder. I experienced this with food. I am eating a comfort food, and then I don't eat it for weeks, and then I go back to eating it, and then, oh, all of a sudden, it's way better than I remember, but only that first time. Everything else is just back to the norm, kind of, like, slowly going back to the norm. I wonder, though, what's gonna happen with Izuku? That weird pause was me drinking water. Which, by the way, you should be doing, too, if you haven't. But yeah, what's gonna happen with Izuku? And I'm just saying, Izuku gets adopted by Aizawa. Just saying, just throwing that in there, please, please. Or Tsukauchi, I don't care. I just need this freaking child to have a loving home. Please and thank you. Please and thank you. Another weird pause because I'm taking another sip. As always, my raindrops. Make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.